Now you haven't used a lot, but you have done a few couple of throw new illegal argument exception or something. We've used. Java is full of, it has many exception classes that may kind of take care of all the type of exceptions your application is throwing. But when applications become kind of closed, they're written for companies, then there may be some errors there may be some exceptions or error messages that have no counterpart in the Java library. So illegal argument exception, okay, your argument was incorrect. Argument is null, you are trying to work with the null object. Division by zero, arithmetic exception, because you're doing something by zero. So you could use the classes that are already available in Java, and it is highly recommended. Why reinvent the wheel? But there may be custom-made exceptions that you want to throw. For example, in a product, you may throw something like invalid product ID. So nobody in the Java class library has written something like this, or quantity cannot be less than zero, or price cannot be less than zero. So since these exceptions have not been kind of written, you can create your own exceptions and give them names that make more sense, and then print out messages that make more sense for your application. So that's why you build your own exception classes, right? If you can't find something in the library. So I'll show you how to do a very simple one today. Keep in mind, in Java, there is a class called exception that sits at the head. It is also inheriting from throwable, but there is an exception class, and the exceptions are kind of divided into two categories. One, the runtime, and the other doesn't have a name. So non-runtimes, we can say. The runtime exceptions is exceptions that you may have seen: index out of bounds, division by zero, right? These are called runtime exceptions. If your program gets it, what happens? Your program stops abnormally, and you get some error messages, and it doesn't work. Now you should know how to handle them. You don't want your program to abruptly just stop and the user saying, oh, what happened? A graceful termination would be that you give a proper message to the user, say this went wrong, and then the program closes. If you want to, or you can ask the user again for more input. However, but a graceful termination definitely is recommended over a abnormal termination. So we will learn how to handle exceptions, because you don't want to see all those errors that don't make sense to a common man. Remember, you're building something for a general layman. Same with game. When you build your game, just assume that it's somebody who doesn't know even how to play a game, and he or she is doing it for the first time. So always keep in mind that you should have a good interface with the whoever is using your program. There should be a good interface and easy to use, right? So you wouldn't like to go and say, oh, how do I use this Coke vending machine? Things should be clear, so the interface build should be clear. The buttons should be named properly. So the methods should be named properly. You should exactly know what needs to be done if I want a Coke out of that machine. With anything. So that's the aim. So that you have to keep that aim in mind, that when you create an application, that application must be user-friendly, easy to use, and must make sense, of course, right? That's a part. I mean, it should work properly is very important. But these are the other things that you have to keep in mind. So today what I'm trying to do is I'll complete this product class with you. I'll show you how to write an exception class of your own, how to throw exceptions, and how to handle exceptions on the tester side. So how do you handle them? So kind of that will take away the time today. I don't think I'll be able to go to the stock class, which I wasn't able to with the other section. Okay, so if you have downloaded the product code from Blackboard, what I've done is I've just built another package, and I kind of copied the product code here. You will see that there are many errors in here, and that's okay to begin with. What do I see an error right here? My package statement is okay. Anyway, so don't worry about it. We'll work through it. So a few things that you have to keep in mind. You have to learn how to write Java doc comments. There is no escaping it. You have to learn it. And if your grammar is weak or your spellings are weak or whatever, then you will take help of other software programs like maybe Word, like maybe Grammarly, right? But everything must come right to me. No spelling mistakes and nothing. And it helps you if you make spelling mistakes. NetBeans helps you. It will underline it. So write correct English. So notice how I have defined my product class. I said this class product defines or models the details of a product, its attributes and methods. Now, if the attributes were a couple, I could mention it, name and whatever. And if the methods were getters and setters, like it is easy, I could mention it. But when the class file becomes too big, we can't mention everything. So we just say its methods and attributes. It will be used. Now, what will it be used for? It will be used to create products that will be stocked in an inventory, to tell what will be the purpose of this product class. Because maybe I'll put some attributes here that don't make sense to be linked to a product, but they make sense when you link them to an inventory. So if I only say product, you will say, oh, what comes in your mind? Name of the product, description of the product, and you will not think of product IDs or price of a product may come to your mind, right? So these are things when I say any product, you say, oh, a product will have a name, will have a description, and will have a price. That's the minimum you can think of. But as soon as I link it to inventory, you will say, oh, there is a quantity that has to be stocked, right? There could be a minimum reorder level at which, are you aware of inventory systems a little? When they go into inventory, there has to be a minimum level maintained, if it can be, of course, if it is not in stock and it cannot be bought. But you can go on stocking beyond a certain limit also. There is a maximum limit too, because it's physically to be stored, right? I mean, if it is an e-line, it's different if it's a e-commerce system, but we're talking about physical space. So you can't stock a product above a limit. You can't stock, you should not be letting it go to zero. There should be a reorder level at which you should do it. And there will always be certain quantity of the product in stock. So therefore, I've mentioned here that it will be used in an inventory system, so that the other attributes that don't make sense when you kind of think of it kind of come to your mind, right? So to keep it simple, I've taken an ID for the product, because if it will be stock, there has to be some unique identification of it. And I'll make it a point that when products are added to the stock, you can't add duplicate ID items. So when you're creating a new product, they can't have something, an ID that is already taken up by another product. So it will be unique. That uniqueness I'll take care of, not in the product class when I stock it, but that's my ID and it will be unique, right? Then the name of the product, which everybody kind of says, yeah, every product will have a name. And then the price of the product, because you buy products and they have prices. The extra attribute, at least the only extra attribute that you're seeing right here, is the quantity. There could be more. As I said, there could be a reorder level, there could be a maximum limit, and so on, right? And that's what I had in mind when I was kind of thinking of an assignment for this one, but we'll see how it goes. So I've added a instance variable called quantity, and it says the quantity of the product in stock. Also notice, as my programs are becoming complex, I've also started to comment my attributes. What does each attribute mean? And that's something that you will have to do too, right? If it is as simple as name of employee, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it, but you'll see as and more attributes you add, you kind of say what will it do. So ID made perfect sense, but I still set a unique identifying number for the product. So every product will have a unique identifying number. The name could be anything. I could be talking about a keyboard. I could be talking about a laptop. So of course, I'm sure when they stock, they have some way of identifying it. I thought ID would be the best one, more than name, because names may not be unique. And then comes quantity, which will be an integer because you don't stock parts of a product. And then the price, which will be a double or a float. I took float in this one so that I could show you that when you pass literals to it, you put an F with it, just to show you different things. We've already used a double in the salary. Okay, so these are the 4 attributes that I think will work. But if you were really to write a better product, I would say, okay, let's add a integer for reorder level. What will this be? This reorder level will be basically the level or the quantity at which you will reorder. So as soon as you sell products, it will automatically check, has the quantity gone below the reorder level? If yes, stock it again, right? Things like that. So there will be a reorder level. Logically, there should be. And there should also be a maximum limit. And these are both integers because they're saying how many. Maximum quantity, you can call it, instead of limit. And that's another integer variable that you may need, right? So here, what will this be? The quantity at which the product needs to be reordered. Oops, needs. So a little bit of inventory information would be like a little concept would be good. And this is the maximum quantity at which, or the maximum quantity product can be stocked. Remember, it's logical, like you have physical space, you just can't keep stocking it. But again, this is not an online one system, so it's more of a real inventory kind of physical, right? So these are 2 other variables that could be and should be attributes of a product that is taking part in an inventory. Anything else you can think of with attributes of product? because I could always miss something, right? I'm never in reality kind of worked with a real inventory system, so I'm also just guessing from my knowledge.
Usually dimensions are inventory system, weight, country of origins, usually pretty typical.
Oh. Yeah, so there are more information that we can see, right? In terms of dimensions and weight, it makes sense because again, it's physical space, right? Yeah, right. Okay. So if we could add more, right? So for now, I'll work with the first four of them, the first four of my instance variables. This is something that I wanted to leave to you, right? And again, time bounding, we'll see how it goes. I've written a few methods for you, which I hope are easy now to understand. I've written the constructor to create objects of class product, and it is throwing an exception called myException, and that doesn't seem to be an exception from the Java class. It's not a good name. I could have called it product exception or something. I just called it myException because it's not only product, it will also come handy in my stock. I could have called it product and stock exception. So something, a better name, of course, but that's not coming from the Java class library. It's an exception class that I will use. So before I even go on to remove all these myException problems, create a class in your package. Create a new class. Call it myException because that's what I've called it, okay? And again, if you want to change the name, sure. But then if you change it here, remember to change it everywhere. Is it going to the right package? I hope I've created this in the right package. Okay, wherever it is being created now. Right, so please remember to remove this unnecessary comments at the head. I'm not interested in seeing any redundant code in your programs. If you don't need something, don't use it, don't declare it. I see scanners and I see JOption objects. I see messages that I haven't even asked for. Because all you're doing is copying my code and making changes. Copy, sure, you can use my code, but remove what is not required, right? You should know what needs to be removed. I don't want to see things that I haven't asked for. And then we'll kind of write this neatly. So this class is basically going to, it will inherit, it has to inherit from somewhere. And there is this biggest class, as I told you, the exception class that sits. So this class defines a custom exception class. And what is its job? Its jobs will be basically to, print out custom messages for the user. That's why it's a custom exception class. Please see that you replace whatever your name is on your computer. I saw many good names in the assignment. Replace it by a proper author name. Now for the date, you can either use since or version. It's whatever works for you, I'm fine, but I don't want to see date. There is no add date. Okay, so use whatever is available. So this is June 15th today. Time really flies, right? And a version number if you want to basically, and you will, in real life, you will be versioning your code, right? As you keep putting it on any version control system like GitHub maybe. And there are a couple of them out there. I know of GitHub because that's the one I mostly use, right? There was the first one that came, I think more than a decade back, was called CVS, I think it was. That was the first versioning system that I had tried using at that point of time, maybe more than a decade. Anyway, GitHub is easy to use now, so I don't even remember what it was. So this is my class, and to say that it is an exception class, what you do is you extend or you inherit from the main exception class in Java. So you have to kind of add this phrase extends exception whenever you are creating your own exception classes. In layman language, since we haven't done inheritance yet, extends simply means that I'm going to inherit from this class called exception. So there is a class called exception in Java, which has many useful methods already defined. And by doing this, we can use those methods, we can override those methods, and we can add new methods to our class. That's what extends means. So extends means inheriting from another class. You can only extend from a class in Java. So by default, you extend from object. Now you're doing two, object and exception. But you don't never write object. And leaving object, you can extend from one more class. That's it. You can't extend comma, comma, comma. You can't do it. It's not allowed in Java. Multiple inheritance is not allowed in Java, right? So you're basically saying that I will be using this class, and it kind of gets its properties and its nature and its method. And because this class is already there, every custom class that you define, which is involving exceptions, you will always extend from the exception class. There are other options. You'll say, no, I don't want to do it from exceptions. I want to do it from runtime exceptions. because these two groups are a little different. One is more system dependent, not your code, and runtime is more with your code. But this is a general way of doing it, right? Now, what do? The easiest exception class that I'm creating, you will write your constructor. So this constructor creates objects of type of my exception. You don't even have to say. Now something else again, because you haven't yet done it, but we will need to. So there is no difference in writing constructors. It's public, has no return type, has the same name as the name of the class. But a rule that you have to kind of understand now. Whenever you extend from a class, irrespective of whatever class it is, when you extend from a class, then it is a requirement that the first call in the constructor of the class, the first call, the first statement should be a call to the constructor. Let me explain what I'm trying to say, maybe more generally. So as I said, when you extend from a class, you get everything that the class has, methods and non-private attributes and everything. It becomes yours. You can use it too. The only method you cannot use is the constructor. You can't use it because it's a special kind of method that only works with objects of that kind. But you may need to. There may be two instance variables that the parent has, and you would like to initialize them like the parent does, but you can't inherit that way. To inherit it or to use it, you have to call that constructor. And this is how you call the constructor of a parent. You go super, and then depending upon what does my class have, what does my parent class have, you'll have to find out what does the exception class have. So let's go and look for the exception class. So I'm going to look for Java 8 documentation. And pick up the Java API and look for the class called exception. Just to show you what are the various constructors that are available. Sure, there is a better way of doing this. That's just Control F. I just use Control F. And notice this is telling you there are so many exception classes in Java that I'm kind of still going. I'm still going enters, and I haven't reached my exception class yet. Almost there. And there are thousands, I shouldn't say thousand, but quite a bit of. There it is. There is my exception class. Okay. So notice the exception class is inheriting from throwable, which is inheriting from object. And look at its direct subclasses, not indirect. These subclasses may further have children, and they may further have children, right? So inheritance can go on to whatever level. But these are the subclasses that come under the exception class. And some of them something that you may have heard before, like something like, I don't know, do I see arithmetic exception here? No, because it will be a sub of runtime exception. Illegal class format exception should make sense if you've heard of it before. Something that will make more sense, invalid application. IO exception, anytime you have a problem with the IO, input, output, that will come up, right? So if one of these classes the name kind of matches what you want to do, use it. But if there is nothing here which makes sense for using in your own application, then just create one. Let's look at its constructors. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 constructors. You can call any of the constructor you like, right? As long as you call one of the constructors. Since constructors are not inherited when you do inheritance, you have to call them yourself. And this is how you call them. You say super. Super is this is the reserved word to mean the current object. Super automatically makes a call to the super class. Super means parent class. Now you saw there were 5. I'm going to use one which will kind of be good for me. I'll take a message from the user, because the whole purpose of showing an exception or telling what went wrong is to show a message to the user. And I'll pass this message to the exception constructor. And was there a constructor that took a string? Yes, there was. If you kind of paid attention, it was the second one. There it is. So why am I not using the first one and the second one? Because the whole purpose is to spit out a message, an error message to the user. What went wrong? And if I don't give a message, then it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I chose this one. There are more. This is an easy one of the first two to choose, right? And that's all you require. If you had more extra instance variables here, I don't have any, my class doesn't need any more, but if I had more, I would be initializing them in my constructor. So your parent may have instance variables, the subclass may have it. It will say, okay, do what you are doing with those, I'll do the rest with mine. So it kind of makes the job. But in its simplest form, that's all you need in an exception class. So you've created a custom exception class called myException. When you create an object of it, you need to pass it a message, a string. And what it will do is it will pass that message to its parent class, which is exception. Right? So it has to extend exception. There is nothing, you can't get out of it. You have to extend it. That's how you create exception classes. Okay, let's save this. That's all you need to do, nothing else. Oh, we need a param here. So please add a param, and it is a string. It is called message. And this is actually the message to be printed when an error occurs. They called it exception instead of errors like we usually do in other programming languages, but that's what it is. Errors is a different group of special errors in Java, more system related. Anyway, right? So the message to be printed when an error occurs. That's what this message will be. That's what I'll do with this message. I get it. I pass it to my parent. And who's my parent? In this case, the parent is the exception class. So there we are. We are ready to work with it. Okay. So this class is ready. As soon as this class is ready, most of the errors from this have gone away. I see this one. What is this one? Just the last one. I think, yeah, there. This is an empty method which we will be completing. Just to remove this red squiggly because it's kind of irritating, we'll just say return false here. Why return false? Because the return type is Boolean. So just say return true or false, doesn't matter. As long as it has a return statement, it will be fine. Any more errors? No red squigglies now. Right? Nothing. So at least it is free of compilation errors. Now let's start looking at it and understanding it. And again, hopefully some will be easy and some I'll repeat. This is another way of some programmers like to put their param ID in one line and its description in the other line, next line. Some people like this style. So I've shown you this style if you would like to take it, right? But I just thought I would let you know. So this constructor is taking an ID, is taking a name, is taking a quantity. Oops, I've missed the fourth one, please. And is taking a price. Please add another param. Good that you can have some practice with me. That param is called price. And what is it? It's basically to set the price of the product. Please note technical comments in your, don't call it something an array or an array list. Don't use technical terms in your comments. Though it is for somebody who knows Java, your comments should be neat and clean, like simple to understand, right? And what am I doing? What I usually do. I'm setting the ID using the set method, setting the name, setting the quantity, and setting the price. You will notice, I don't know if some of you have noticed, you get some warnings here. It says overridable method call. You'll say, what is it talking about? You will know a little more about this once we do inheritance after the reading break. It is not recommended to write the set methods as public, but to make them private and put a method in between. We'll talk about it. For now, there is nothing wrong in it. There's nothing wrong in what we are doing. It's just not the best practice. Once you know inheritance, you will start to become better. Okay. I know my class is not going to inherit, is not going to be a father or parent of any class. So that's why I'm being a little lazy. So they want you to be perfect. So that's your constructor, nothing new in the constructor, but always call set methods. That's a rule because all validation is done in set. Let's look at get ID, nothing big at all. Set ID, get name, nothing big, only returning a name. Get quantity and get price. Simple methods. All they're doing is returning. So I kind of completed them for you because there's nothing much to do. Let's start writing our set methods now. When you set the price of a product, can it ever be negative? No. So if you pass a negative value, to a method that is not expecting a negative value, what is the best it can do? It can throw back a message at you, or it can throw back an exception object at you. So that's what happens. If the method says there's something called design by contract in Java. These are design principles. And the design says, if you don't keep the part of your promise, I'm not going to work for you. So if you give me a price that is negative, and I can't do anything with the negative price, I'm just going to tell you I can't do it. And how does Java tell? You could be putting a system out println, which we never do in classes. Classes don't do that. You could be returning a Boolean value false, and then in your application, you are checking, oh, false came back, something went wrong. Or the most appropriate and common is it throws an exception object back at you. It says, okay, you didn't keep part of a promise, here is your problem. And it gives it back to the application, whoever is calling that method. And now the application says, oh, what do I do? And that's what we will learn today. What do I do? But right now, all it needs to be done is this. So there is a parent price that is coming in to set or change the price of the product. Then I've added at add throws, which says it throws my exception if the price is less than or equal to 0. You can say, oh, 0 is okay for a price. If that's what you want, you can remove the equality sign. I just said less than equal to 0. I mean, it's something that you have to think. Will I let the price of a product be equal to 0 in inventory? No, I won't allow that. So I'll say less than 0 is a problem. Now, how do I take care? Notice any method that is going to throw an exception has to have throws my exception in its signatures. Who is calling the set price method? The constructor. The constructor will also need a throws my exception in the product. Now, what is this throws? Throws simply means this. Whoever calls the set price method, if the price given is less than or equal to 0, all it will do is it will throw an exception object. And to tell that, throws, the name of the exception is added to the signature of the method. Who is calling it? Constructor will call it. Now, if this constructor says, oops, an exception object came back to me, but I'm not handling it, the class doesn't handle it. The class says, it's not my job. You do it. I'm just telling you something went wrong. So it says, I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to throw it whoever called me. And who will call the constructor? Some application which will be creating an object of type project. So ultimately, the application will have to take care of it. And if it doesn't, then I'll show you what happens. Okay. So therefore, you will see that in every signature that is throwing an exception or is calling a method that is throwing an exception, I have added throws my exception. So how will you write it? You simply, this is a better practice. You check the problem first. So then you don't need an else. So you're saying if my price that is coming in is less than or equal to 0. That's what we are saying, right? We are not allowing a 0 value also. We are only allowing positive. If we said, oh, 0 is allowed to begin with, you can give it a 0. You don't yet know the price. You've just stocked it. We'll remove the equality. It's just what it is, logic. If that's the case, then what will you do? What will the method do? The method will throw an object of type my exception. That's how you create an object of my exception. New my exception. That's how we create it, right? You could put it in a local variable first and then throw it, but this is the common way of doing it. Now, the my exception, remember, it required a string. So what would be a good message to give? You could say something like price of the product needs to be greater than 0, right? So that message comes to the user and the user says, oh, I've made a mistake, right? So try to give positive messages instead of saying price cannot be, say price must be greater than 0. It's just user interface design says giving positive messages to user is a positive feeling, right? So price must be greater than 0, and which makes sense. I mean, it will make sense to any person who's using your application. So somebody is talking and they input something and they give a negative price and it comes back with saying price must be greater than equal to 0, greater than 0. The user says, oh, makes sense. So messages must make sense to not programmers, to users, because this error message will be shown in the application. And who uses applications? Users use the application. Else, if that's the problem, we stop right there. Now, else is not required because a throw is like a return. It's like a return. Throw says, take this exception object and return it to the calling method. Remember, this method is being called from somewhere. We are not concerned who's calling it right now. Constructor is calling it. Maybe it's called from the tester. We don't know. But this method says, methods are independent. They do their job. Doesn't matter who is going to work with me. So this method says if the price is less than or equal to 0, I'm going to create an exception object. That exception object has a message inside it. All you have to learn is how to get that message out when you print it. The message inside it, and you throw it back to the calling method. Whoever called you, the calling method or calling procedure or whatever, the caller, let's say the caller, and it returns. So you don't need an else here because it has returned. If everything goes well, what do you want to do? You want to set the price of your current object to the price being passed. Not required. It's not required. You could put it, but it's redundant. So again, please don't write redundant code. Write efficient code. Only code that is needed. Okay, only the code that is needed. So else is not required because the throw is like a return. So you can think of it, oh, it returns, so it will never come to this statement. But if it does not, if this condition is not true, it will automatically come to this one. And that's exactly what I want to do. So this is your set price. So we'll learn how to now handle it on the other side. Not right now, but let's complete it. Let's look at the other one. This sets the ID. ID didn't have much to set. You could have said, oh, the ID has to start with 4 letters and so on and use regular expressions. I'm not going that route right now at all. This is setting the name, not much to be done, no data validation. You could do it. There are many ways of doing it. And then comes quantity. And it says the quantity, if it is less than or equal, I'll change in one of the methods so that you see the difference. Can quantity be equal to 0? Yeah, quantity equal to 0 is not invalid. Finished. It is not in stock. So let's just change this so that I can show you the condition, though you know it. It's not a big deal. You first check the condition. It's better to do it this way. So you are saying if the quantity that comes in is less than 0, then you do what? You again throw the same exception, but notice what I'll do now. I'll change the message and it will talk about quantity now. That's the whole beauty of passing a message. I'll say quantity in stock or in the inventory, whatever, in the stock must be greater than or equal to 0. We're allowing 0, okay? That message will go back to the user. Of course, this message makes more sense than saying price is negative. So if you're creating a problem in the price, it should say price is a problem. If you're creating a problem in the quantity, it should say quantity is a problem, right? And that's the whole purpose of creating your own exceptions. Now you can give a message that you want. Nowhere will this come handy. You could have said throw new exception, but that's not usually the practice. You don't use the exception class like generally, but it can be done. But this way you have your own exception classes defined in your project, which are tailored to your application. Else means again, else is not required. And therefore I write it in this sequence. Instead of saying if quantity is greater than or equal to 0, do this, else do this. To avoid else, I simply write it. I check the problem first and then do the rest. Both are okay. You can write it the opposite. You can kind of say, I'll check whether it is greater than or equal to 0 first. Sure, go ahead and do it. There's nothing wrong. You will just need extra else statement. Oops. Right, there it is. So nothing new again. I threw an exception object back at the caller. Whoever called it, I just threw it. So if the constructor calls it and passes it a negative value, it's throwing the exception object to the constructor. And the constructor has to do something with it. And what does it say? I'm not doing anything. I'm going to throw it further. So it comes to the application. If the application is not well written, the application will say, no, I don't handle it. And where will it throw? To the JVM, to the Java runtime unit. Of course, the Java runtime unit doesn't have a forefather. So it says, here, there's your problem. Do whatever you want. It prints out it on the screen in all that red stack trace and everything. So at the end, that's what will happen. But we'll learn how not to make that happen. This one returns a description of the product. We will always make it a point. Always have a two-string method in your class. If it is working with an array list, like your deck of cards, I wrote one there too. Right? So you should know how always to write a two-string method. And we are overriding the two-string method of the object class. So what did I do? I started with an empty string variable object. And then I said, using my format specifiers, %s for strings, f's for floats and doubles, I and d for integers. So look it up. They're just format specifiers. So it says this person. So I'm going to get the ID. This product, I'm going to get the ID. And I'm saying there are or is this much of this product in stock. So the first %s gets replaced by get ID. The get quantity replaces this %d. %d is for integer. This %s is replaced by get name, the name of the product. This %.2f is replaced by the get price. Right? So f's for doubles and floats, s for strings, d for integers. And I think I also works for integers. I forget now. I could be confusing it with C#, but definitely these three are right. D, S, and F. Right? If you don't want to say a point to, you can do without it. Now, how many places will be printed after the decimal will depend upon your answer. If it has no decimal points, it won't print it. If it has 1, it will print 1. If it has 3, it will print 3. By going point to F, you are being consistent. Every price will be printed with 2 places after decimal. Okay, so that's the two string. For now, we will kind of, for a minute, I will leave the, oh no, not this one. Anyway, this one I'll do. I was thinking the next is equal. Now, so those are the common methods. You get, you set, if required. You may not have getters or setters depending upon whether information is of a nature that doesn't need to be shown to the outside world. It's a SIN number. No, anything that's done. What other methods? What else do you do with the product? Those are the other methods. The toString is also kind of common. It will always be there in every class. What do you do with the product? Kind of think of what does one do with the product? So you think you are an inventory manager, or maybe even a customer. You can even think like a customer, at least one method like a customer. Sorry? Okay, but is that a method? No, it's an instance variable. So expiry date is a property, a characteristic. You could be setting and getting it, but I'm talking about more methods that are useful with the product. Like what do you do with a car? You drive a car, you turn right, you turn left, you reverse. Those are the methods of a car. What methods of a product come to your mind when you think about a product?
Removing and replacing products.
Okay, so basically selling.
Yep,
selling. So you will sell a product. So that's a method. A product must have a sell method. Otherwise, how will you remove it from the inventory or wherever? Like if you are a customer, you can kind of say buy a product, but it comes to the same thing. The product is thinking of I'm being sold. Customer is thinking of I'm buying the product. So there has to be a sell method. You could be selling a product in a single quantity. You could be selling a product in any number of quantities, right? The replace. So Nicholas said sell and then replace. So replace means you could be adding to the stock. You could be restocking, right? So there's another method, restocking a product. So those are the two obvious methods that should be present in the product class. So let's write them, right? So the first one I've picked up to write is restocking. It could be anything. If you don't like the word restock, you can go add stock. Restock sometimes is taken as if you are replacing the previous one and giving something new. If you want to call it add stock, that's also fine. You can call it add stock, right? So you're basically adding. So when do you add? When of course you're selling and they're becoming less in number. But here now I don't have those extra maximum quantity and reorder level. So for me, add stock will be give me an amount. I will just add it to my inventory. I'm not even taking care whether you reached your upper limit or not, which you should. But again, as I said, that was part of your assignment, not my, because I was giving you this. But anyway, if time permits, we'll do it when we come back, right? So an amount is given and I want to add it to my stock. You can call your method anything as long as it is making sense. I called it restock because that's what I thought about it. If you want to call it add stock, we can change it, whatever works. I don't know what I did with the other section, to be very truthful. If you pick up your own code from Blackboard, there should be no confusion. Anyway, so you're adding. So I'm saying, okay, you are taking some number of units. Now, if you don't like the word amount, you can call it number of units. Add the number of units to your code. So instead of amount, we can say number of units, except that it's a long name, but that's okay. Right? And then we'll change it here also. So good names are important. So add stock, restock, whatever makes sense. Okay, so what is it saying? When will this method cause a problem? Can you add a negative number of units to your stock? Nope, you can't. So this will throw an exception when you try to add negative number of units to your stock. Doesn't make sense. Can I say add -5 keyboards to my stock?
Yep, that's the way you do adjust your
Okay. Yes, if you have to do an adjuster of it, right? If you think of it that way, that you're removing stuff. Right? So maybe from that point of view, it makes sense. For me, I'm just saying adding. The removing can be a different method. Okay, so I'm saying, okay, I want to add. So it says this method adds the given number of units. Just because I've changed now, I have to change all my units of the product to its stock. That's what it does. So it's only adding for me. But definitely, Brian's point is not right. Sometimes you can use the same method to remove. Instead of having a different button, remove, you could be adjusting in here. I'll keep it to what I have for now. And the number of units is a param, the number of items of a product to be added. Instead of items, you can say units, if that makes more sense. And the throws, it will throw an exception if you try to add a negative number to it. And as I said, I'm not checking for maximum quantity, but it should also be throwing an exception when you're trying to stock and there is no place for it. So that is the maximum quantity attribute of your problem. That is where it will come handy. So you will say amount should not be less than 0 and what you are adding should not make it more than maximum quantity, right? So you don't add it. Okay, so what should we do here? Our first check is if the number of units is less than or equal to 0. Adding 0 units is not harmful because you're not adding anything, but I thought, what is the sense of adding 0 units? Again, the conditions are flexible. So we'll throw an exception. And again, a message that will make sense. You can say something like units units to be added to stock, product stock or whatever, must be greater than or equal to 0. Again, a message that makes sense to the user pertaining to this problem, right? So it says units to be added to product in stock must be, or just into product, you don't have to say in stock, must be greater than or equal to 0. And if that's not the case, then what must you do? How do you add a number of units to a product in stock? Which instance variable will get affected? Which instance variable? The ID, the name, the quantity. The quantity gets affected. Now, if you were not thinking, and I don't want you to do this, but if you were not thinking, you would just go, the new value of quantity is the old value of quantity plus the number of units. That's the obvious thing you would do. That's how you increase a stock. You just take the number of units I've given you and you add it to the stock. It is highly recommended, and logically so, that never change the value of an instance variable if there is a set method that already does it. Why? Because set is doing validation. You'll say, oh, that will never occur. I'm giving it a positive number. It is being added to a positive number. There are 5. I'm adding 5 more. Why should I bother? All validation that the set method is doing is it should not be less than 0. Don't worry about it, right? Let the job be done by the method who knows how to do the job. So don't think too much, right? So if you have to think that let the right method do the job. So call the set quantity method, take its help, and remember what set quantity needed? Set quantity said, what is the new value of the quantity you want to set? It will just set it, not add it. So since we have to do that math ourselves, and again, the gets are kind of thought of as an overkill, but I always use them in my toStrings and wherever I need to make changes in my. So get the quantity, add the number of units to it, set it back to the quantity. That's the correct way of doing it. It's no different from what we wrote, but there's a big difference. Data validation is being done by the set quantity method. What doesn't it like spelling? Yeah. There. Right? That's how you, that's the meaning of adding to stock. What do you change? The quantity. And extra checks can come in. They're not, but they can come in. It shouldn't go beyond the quantity, maximum quantity. But we won't talk about it. We're not even bothering. We have enough space, which is not the true picture, right? But we have enough space. We have limited time, but we have enough space. Okay, so that's how you do a set. That's how you change. So never do it yourself. Always use, and make it a note for yourself, always use set method to change an instance variable. Remember, these are comments for you and me. We understand what an instance variable is. This is not for the user. These are just general comments. Java doc comments are for people who use your class. So always use set method to change the value of an instance variable. Whatever you would like to, something that makes sense to you. And you'll say, if it doesn't have validation, can I still do it myself? No, don't bother. Just call the set method. That's why we wrote it. That was the whole purpose. Let one thing do a job, and let's say you do the job. That person will know how to do the job best, right? So you're kind of delegating your responsibilities. And that's how you do it. Now this, some people, I mean, and I don't argue with them, this is an overkill. Here you could just have said quantity plus number of units, because quantity is an instance variable of the object. Getting it is expensive. Expensive in terms of time, right? When I say expensive, it means it will take time. A method is called. So whatever the system is doing, it kind of stops, calls the method, gets the values back, and then goes forward. So there is a time involved. But I don't know, like, again, there are a whole set of two groups. One says, why even use get? You're talking to the object. You're inside the object, right? I'm inside the object. The method belongs to the class. So I'm not so particular about the get, but I'm definitely particular about the set. That definitely has only one opinion throughout programmers. Use the set methods. Restock is done. Stock has been added. Then we were talking about selling. So is this clear? That's all it affects. Now, of course, if I had more instance variables, it would have affected my maximum quantity and so on. But for now, since I'm not using them, that's all it affects, the quantity of the product. Doesn't affect the ID, doesn't affect the name, doesn't affect the price.
We can use instance variable that get quantity place.
Yes, you can. I would avoid it. Whenever you are making changes, always talk to the instance variable through the get and always set it through the set. Make it a practice, right? So, but yeah, but this, if you don't do this, you will definitely lose marks because you're not doing the right thing. This is up to you. It's not a big deal because there's nothing wrong in it, right? But here, of course, there is wrong in it. You didn't do any validation. Else you do the validation here. But I don't want to repeat my validation here. It doesn't make sense. So I said, let's set the set method to it. Okay. So, I mean, I don't want to see you just doing quantity and doing your validation here itself. Now, here is the method that we're talking about, sell product. Now, I've written 2 of them. You don't have to. But again, we always try to make things easy for our customer. We say, okay, if you only want a product, just press a button. You don't have to give any input. You need 1 product. But if you want to buy more than 1 units of that product, then press the other button and then it will require another input from you. How many? So I've given that option. You don't have to write 2 methods. I could have passed a 1 into it and this will work. But I just gave the option of a little extra, like easy, just pressing, and the other one is saying pressing and giving a value. So again, just to keep in mind. So what does this method do? This method sells a product. Doesn't want anything from you. Its job is to sell the product. You will call it with P1 or P2, whatever your product dot sell, right? So we are thinking from this point of view, not from buying point of view. We are not a customer. We are the inventory manager. So this method sells a product. It will throw my exception if there is no product in stock. You can't sell something that is not in stock. And you have to tell the user it's not in stock. You go to a store and you say, I'm looking for this, I can't find it. The person goes to his or her computer, brings it up and says, oh, sorry, it's not in stock. So somebody is taking care of it, right? So what should you do? So before even you start selling a product, you have to check what quantity, right? You have to check the quantity of the product. So again here, could I say just quantity or should I use get quantity? Again, I leave the gets to you. I'm not a fan either way. Right? So if the quantity, to sell 1 product, you definitely need more than 0, right? So if the quantity is greater than 0, you're okay to sell. Again, I am not going to do anything reordering, so on. I'm not taking care. But if the so let's do the opposite because we throw exceptions first. So if the quantity is less than or equal to 0, we'll throw an exception. Do I have my exceptions? Yes. And that's what you tell the user. The product is not in stock. So doing the negative part first, kind of, I don't have to write the else. That's my only advantage. I don't have to write an else. Else, what do you want to do? So you have sold a product. So what must you do to your inventory? Reduce it by 1. So your new quantity is quantity minus 1. But again, I'm not going to say new quantity. I mean, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to say set quantity, you do the job. What is your job? Get whatever you have and subtract. You could go minus. No, you couldn't. Sorry, not in this one. And you set it to minus. That's selling a product. Reduce the quantity by 1. Product is sold. It's out of inventory. Now there is no extra check. What if it went below the reorder level? You will do those checks. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead now. Now this method sells some items of the project. We don't know how much, but certain number of items, right? So certain number you could say, or you could say some. And that will be provided by the user, the amount. Again, you can call it number of units. If your amount doesn't make a lot of sense, amount is more to do with money, but amount just means number. And the number of items of a product to be sold. And again, it throws an exception if there is not enough to sell, right? Okay, so if you want to change this to number of units, depends on you. Like I just wrote it as things came to my head. As long as they are not called A, B, C, X, Y, Z and make sense. Amount makes sense. Just some people think of amount as money. So number of units. Now, same kind of concept. Can I sell something if it is not in stock? No. So I'm kind of going to copy this. Of course, it will change. But you tell me the change. I want to sell some units. Now, the first thing I must check, even before I do this, I must check. And I've done it before. So you know what? I can do more than one check. Nothing stops me. So I'm saying if the number of units to sell is less than or equal to 0, then I'll change the message. I'll say units to be sold must be greater than or equal to 0. You can't sell a negative number of products, of units, of a product. You can't. It has to be positive. 0 again, I leave it to you. So this is the first problem I could encounter, right? So as soon as I encounter this, it doesn't even go further. It says, you're asking to sell minus 5 units. Now again, the negative positive thing is something that we can think of, but more in stock.
Would it be less than 0, not equal to?
Because does it make sense selling 0 units of a product? Like, no, you don't sell 0 units. It has to be a positive number. So you could take it, but 0 is like neither this way nor that way. It's not an error, but it's useless, right? It's not an error, but it's useless to sell 0 units. You okay? Okay, right? So you are thinking the positive side. No, we are writing the negative one. What is wrong? So wrong to sell less than or equal to 0 units, right? So what did I say? Units to be sold must be greater than or equal to 0. I stop here. The method says, why need I even go further? What's the sense? Your input is wrong. You're saying, can I buy minus 5 bananas? How can that be? If that's okay, now there is another thing to check. Now what? If you're going to sell number of units to the customer, you must at least have those many number of units, right? So if it is less than this number of units, equality is okay. Except that your quantity will go to 0, but that's okay. So if your quantity in stock is less than what the customer is asking, you say, I cannot sell. There could be something, there could be an option of, okay, buy these many and come back for the rest. I mean, you can add as much complexity as you want. But I'm keeping it very simple, right? I'm keeping it simple just because it's better to understand something rather than trying to do something you don't understand, right? So I'm saying, okay, product not in stock in the asked quantity, in the required quantity. Makes sense? So you're just telling the customer, oh, I don't have 5 of these. So the customer wants 5 and you say, I don't have 5. So what are you checking against? If your quantity is less than what the customer wants, you can't sell. That's what I'm saying. You say, I can't do it. So you're basically not saying I can't, you're just saying there's not enough in stock. Then of course the user can have the option of, oh, okay, let me buy less. You could ask how many in quantity. That's all your application. That's not the class. The class simply says, I cannot do it. Else, what must you do? You must subtract how many? Those many number of units from the quantity. You've sold. Product has been sold. That's all there is to the product going on. Right? With, of course, more things that if we add more instance variables, we'll have to do more checking. But right now, that's all it is. If I get time at the end of today's class, I'm hoping to, then I'll add those variables for you, right? So that it is still fresh in your mind. And we don't have to go back to it when we come back, because I don't think there's time for an assignment. The other section couldn't do it. So I can't give it to you. For now, I'll leave out the equals for now. We'll come back to it in a minute and I'll talk about it. Before I write it, before I code it, I'll talk about it. But these are the 3 more methods I've added to my product, leaving the getters and the setters. You need to sell a product and you need to restock a product. You may need to, Brian pointed out, you may need to unstock it also. For whatever reason, maybe the demand is out. Who knows? Like after seasons change. So stores, clothing stores will definitely either put them on sale or they won't stock it. They'll kind of send it back to the manufacturer, whatever it is. So that way your add stock, the name restock was better if you were giving, restock will work both for adding to the stock and removing from the stock. I didn't think about it. I really didn't. I thought, oh, adding just means adding. But now logically, yes, at the end of the day, inventories can send back stock and they do. And they do. Okay, now let's see how do I work with the class I've created till now. What do I do? Okay, so let's save this. I don't see any red squigglies for now. Let's go to your main class, your tester. One gets automatically created. So we'll kind of work with that. Okay, so you can fill it in or whatever. So this class, sorry? No, I put a return false. I put an empty one because we'll come to it, but I just, to make it kind of compilation error free, I said return false. You can do return true or false, doesn't matter, whatever you do, just so that it's not creating a compilation error. We'll come back to it. Okay, so where were we? Here. So this class creates objects of type product, you can say, or products. For now, that's all I'm doing. And what does it do? And we have sell, and we have stock, and we have getters and setters. The purpose here is not very important in this sense. It's not important in the sense that, oh, it should not be correct. It should tell me what you do, but when I say it's not important, I'm talking in terms of the application, right? This is just an application now. So it's not as if somebody is going to use, a programmer is going to use it. So this is more than enough. So this class creates products and sells and stocks them, stocks items. Right? That's what it does. Of course, when I add more to it, we'll do it. And again, the normal add since or whatever you want to do, version or whatever. And oops, spelling is wrong. So, and the version number. We don't have any version numbers. We do everything in one version. Anyway, here. So we all know what these are the command line arguments. Okay, so let's try to do a few things here, which you could have done through BlueJ, but let's do it in test so that you understand it. Okay, so what do I want to do? I want to create a product. So go with the product, right? Call it P1, just to be lazy. You could have called it keyboard or whatever. I'm going to create a new product. Okay, what does it need from me? Doesn't it help me? Why is it giving a red squeak? You should come up with help what parameters are needed. There it is. Right? So when you give something like this, it tries to fill it up, but at least I get an idea. So the ID was a string. So I don't know, let's call it P1 or just 1, if that makes sense for now. Let's give it a name. Let's call it keyboard. You can make any products you like. Then came the quantity, and now I'll start doing checks. So if everything is okay, I'll be fine. But if I make a mistake, so let's make a mistake in quantity first. I'm going to try to set it to -1 and then to $10.50. Keyboards are not that cheap, but anyway. 50, around 50, what would be? A mouse would be, right? And put a semicolon. Now, when you bring your cursor over it, it says unreported exception, my exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. So what is it trying to tell you? It's trying to tell you this. It says when you call the constructor is throwing an exception back. Remember, in its signature, it says throws my exception. And now it is telling you, so it is telling the application, you have to do something with it. Either you don't take responsibility and throw it further. And how does main do that? It says, I'm not taking responsibility. That's the dirty and incorrect way of doing it. But because an application must always take responsibility. You can buy a car and the car manufacturer says, oh, this car will drive with doors closed and you can drive it with doors open. You know what I mean? Like you can't. So the application always has to take responsibility of using the product correctly. But for now, that was the error that was coming. It was saying an unreported exception, my exception is coming. What do you want to do with it? Unreported exception, my exception must be either caught or declared to be thrown. So I declared it to be thrown. I said, throw it away. If it comes to me, I'm going to throw it. Who's calling main? Main is being run by the JVM, the Java Runtime Unit. So Java Runtime Unit will get it. The poor guy doesn't have anywhere to throw it. So what does it do? It throws it back at you with your error messages, right? So that's what it will do. So let's try doing this. So when I do this, that's what it was saying in that red squiggly line, and run this. Of course, you're expecting a problem, right? You see, there is your message, which is kind of lost in all this trace that you see. This is called a stack trace. It's tracing. It's tracing. The problem occurred here because of line 17. So go from bottom up. The problem occurred at line number 17 of this file. This error was coming from product.java at line number 39. That was coming from 28. So ultimately, the 128 line is the root cause. So it's a stack. Stack means first in, last out, right? So you read it the opposite way. So whenever you're looking for errors, look at the problem will be, the ultimate problem will be here. But it says the problem is on this line. So that's the line. You say, oh, the problem is here. Where is it coming from? It says it is coming from here, from the constructor. because you call the constructor. The constructor says, where is that problem coming from? It says, oh, the problem is coming from here. So there is where the exception was thrown, and the message comes on the screen. Except that a normal user would not like to see that. A normal user would only like to see the message, right? And that's what we'll now learn, how to handle an exception. So is this the right way of doing it? Not at all. Not in an application. Yes, the class will not bother to do anything for you. The class will say, there is the contract. You give me $5, I give you 5 things. You give me minus $5, I give you an exception, right? So that's the contract with the class. Now the application decides what has to be done. So how do you now handle exceptions in code? And the handling is always done at the last end in the application. So let's learn how to do it. And this is a little new for you. Of course it is, because we are handling it for the first time, and this is something new, and see if you can understand it. You have to. Okay, so let's try to do something. So exceptions are handled in Java and also in other modern programming object-oriented languages using a construct called try, catch, finally. That's the name of the construct. It's called a try, catch block, but it is actually try, catch, finally block. Okay, so you try to do something. So what are you trying to do? Oops, sorry, wrong place, because I am at the wrong place in the application. Oops, what have I done here now? What did I do that I shouldn't be doing? Oh, I know what I've done. There. Okay, there. Sorry, I was in the class. Go to your application. So the application says, I'm not going to do it. We say, no, you have to do it. Right? So we have to do this at the last end. That's my last stage. Application is using the class. The application can get away with it. Okay, so what does the application do? The application says, okay, I am trying to create a product. I'm trying to create. That's why it's called try. I'm trying it. If a problem occurs, please catch it. So this is the try catch block. You say try. You put whatever you're trying to do, trying to execute some statements, put it in opening and closing. This is the end of try, not of the whole block, of the try. So, and you'll say if everything goes okay, then maybe the rest of the statements come here. So everything now is put in try catch. The whole, all your main goes into a try catch. Now you'll say catch. And what does catch do? Catch says, I'm going to catch this exception. So you have to mention which exception are you going to catch. I'm going to try to catch the my exception. There could be many exceptions that are thrown. You're saying, I'm going to catch them. I'm going to try to catch them. Give it a name because we'll need it. And what are you expected to do at the minimum to catch an exception? You want to print out a message to the user. So notice no printing in the class. The printing is done here. And you want to print a message that has already been thrown at you. This message is already coming from the class. So take your exception object that is being thrown at you. It's called E. And get the message out of it. The method is already available, and print it on the screen. It returns a string. There, that's your easiest catch. That's your easiest catch. Let's try it now. So I have removed the throws my exception. So you have two options. You can either handle it or you can throw it further. But of course, you are not throwing it further in applications. I don't want you to do it. You need to handle it. Otherwise, you will see this. And no user is going to buy your program. No user is going to even try to run your code. This is an application. You're going to sell it in the market. So I'm going to run it now. And notice the change. Graceful termination. It has terminated. I mean, it has to. It can create the product. How can you create a product with a negative quantity? You cannot. So the graceful termination is show the message on the screen and the program stops. Of course, you could have made it better. We could have put it in a while loop, and while the quantity is whatever, we would have kept asking, and that would be the right way. You don't say, oh, application closed, again he opens it and runs it, again closes. So you will put it in a loop, but that's one step ahead. But this is what you have to do. You have to give graceful termination. Now, can a try only have a catch? No, you can put as many catches as you like. So suppose, oops, because I forgot my, so I'll just say ME so that I can remember of my exception. Suppose there are different kind of exceptions that can occur in your code. There can be a my exception, there can be an arithmetic exception, there can be a illegal argument exception, or there can be any other exception that you can't think of, but you say, let me be on the safe side, because remember, you always write defensive programs. What can you do? You can say At the end, the sequence is important. At the end, if there is any kind of exception, catch it. So you're safe now. So you're saying, okay, if my exception occurs, do this. If some other exception occurs, please do this. Now that do that will be, of course, God knows what, but the least I can do is I can again print out the message. So when it comes to this block, E is an exception object. So it will print out the message that the Java runtime has in it. I'll show you. Let me show it to you. Whereas when it comes to this catch, it will print your message because this object is of what type? My exception. So what have you taken care of? You've added another catch block to your try. A try can have as many number of catches as you like, as long as they are in sequence. What is the sequence? Children come first, parents come at the end. Because exception is the father of all exception classes, I've put it at the end. If I wanted to add another one, just out of the blue, I'll add it. I'll add another one, something I will try to show you. Add another catch block. And let's catch arithmetic exception. And I'll print out that message. Arithmetic exception is a subclass of exception, so I placed it before exception. If you try to change the sequence or kind of mess it up, it will tell you, it says, you can't do it. So if I try to pick this up, and this is of arithmetic exception, if I pick this catch up from here, and I kind of don't put it at the right place, I'm going to see a problem. Bring your mouse over it, it will say exception, arithmetic exception has already been caught. You'll say, where is it? I didn't catch it. I don't see a catch block. Who caught it? It was caught here because exception is the parent of arithmetic exception. So you have to be careful about the sequences in exceptions. Go from smallest to largest, children to grandparents. Keep that in mind, right? So the last if ever, if there will be, you may not even write this, but usually it's kind of on the defensive side. You may have thought of any problem that can occur in your code, but you're still being defensive that let me add a catch block at the end of my catches just in case. Always defensive programming, and it's not a big deal. You're just adding an exception. If you don't need the arithmetic exception, please don't add it. But how will it throw? I'll show you what will happen. Let's do this. So for the heck of it, I'll do it before. I'm sure you know this. Can you divide a number by 0? Integers, not floating point numbers. Can you divide an integer by 0? No, you cannot. It will give you an error. I don't know if you've ever encountered it. Dividing by 0, right? Let's try this. So there is a problem here. I know there is because integer division is not allowed. Float will be fine. I'll show you, but not with integers. And then I have a problem with my second statement also. But as soon as I have one problem, it will stop because it goes to a catch and stops. Let's try this. Let's try to run this code now. Division by 0 will cause a problem. Where is this message coming from? Division by 0. Division by 0 is coming from here. Arithmetic exception is predefined in the Java class library. It has its own messages, and that's a decent message. I mean, maybe not everybody understands what the slash is, but that's the message it gave, division by 0. So exception classes have been predefined in the Java class library, and there are many. If something works for you, use it. If something doesn't work for you, create your own exception classes. If these were missing for whatever reason, if both of these were missing, see what happens. So let me remove both of them. I don't have it. I didn't catch it. I didn't catch it. I did nothing. Let's see what happens. Same thing that was happening with you. The JVM automatically caught it. So for these exceptions, runtime exceptions, you don't have to write the throws clause even. It will automatically be caught by the JVM. Right? But see what and it does say division by 0, same like it did yours. But again, there's just a stack trace of all your errors. You can get this stack trace yourself also if you want by using the method get stack trace or get something like that. There's a method. If you want it while you're programming, you would like to see your stacks, you can just use get stack trace or something the method is called. Right? So let's put it back. And now I can, therefore I don't see all this, but I see a neater message. I see the division by 0 and it's neater, graceful termination. So the sequence is important. 2, why didn't it even show me this error? I mean, this was also wrong because as soon as it had a problem here, it came out of the try. It doesn't go forward. As soon as an exception is encountered, it leaves the try block and goes to its corresponding catch. Does whatever catch says and is out of the try catch. So it won't even go to the next statement. So you can't see all exceptions together. You'll have to rectify one, then you can go to the second, rectify the other and go to the third. Now something that is really very odd in Java, and I don't know why they did it. Somebody really loves float. Same thing, all I've said is 2.0 instead of 2. And now I run it. And now look at the error message. Infinity. So it didn't give an error. It said infinity. And now your error is coming because that statement is valid. 2.0 divided by 0 is a valid statement in floating point numbers. It says infinity. Shouldn't be, but I don't know why they did this. Integers behave differently from float for whatever reason. And then because you had a problem in your quantity, it says quantity should be greater than or equal to 0. So there is graceful termination always, right? So this was just to show you how you could produce arithmetic exception. You can create exceptions on your own. I can declare an array here and try to save an element at an out of different position, out of bounds, and it will throw an exception. Till now, you were not doing anything with this exception because you didn't know how to do it. So there are some exceptions. These are called runtime exceptions, one of the subclasses of the exception class. These exceptions are kind of handled automatically by the JVM. So you don't have to write throws exception in your main. You don't have to put it in the signature. Why didn't it complain when I didn't say throws? It didn't complain for this, though it complained for my exception, because it doesn't know how to handle my exception. But it knows how to handle arithmetic exception. So some exception classes are automatically handled, and therefore we say if they are available, use them. But if you want to really be neat, you handle them yourselves. I'll take 5 minutes more because then we'll lose the contact. Now, the other thing that can be added to a try-catch block is a block called finally. It may or may not be present, right? So you could have try, catch as many number of times and then one finally. The use of the finally block is that it is always executed. What do I mean by always? Try could have a statement in try could have a problem. You will come to the corresponding catch, and then you will come to finally, and then you will move out, right? If everything goes well, there is no problem in the statements in the try. So of course you won't go to any of the catches. Everything ran properly. It will still come to finally and then out. So the use of the finally block is if you would like to do some bookkeeping operations, like when you're using files, you would like to close the files. If you are connected to a network, you would like to close the connection to the network. If you're working with a database, you would like to close that connection with the database, you will do it here in the finally block. So just because I don't have anything to do right now, I'll say system.out.println, and I'll just say done. So that I can show you that it will always be called. Now I have a problem. My quantity is -1. Okay. When I run it, done comes on the screen. So it has gone from try to catch to finally, right? Let me now not make this error. Let me not just for the heck of it remove the -1. Now my quantity is valid. Price is valid. Everything is okay. Let's run it again. It goes from infinity, it is printing for the 2.0. It goes to finally still. Everything runs properly and done. I don't go to any catch. There is nothing to go in catch. I said print out 2 divided by 0, which was just to show you. Then I said Control Alt F, is it? No, Control Shift F. Oh, I forget. I always forget what it is in NetBeans. Control Alt F. Okay, right. So you can remove this. This was just to show you something. But anyway, so if everything goes well, you could have done more things, and we will when we come back after break. You could do more things here, but notice it always comes to the catch finally block. So that's the use of finally. So in its complete eternity, a try catch block. It is called a try catch block. It is try catch as many number of times you like in proper sequence, and then one finally. So one try, one finally, as many number of catches in the right order, going from innermost to outermost, children to parents. Right? That's the try catch. That's how you handle exceptions on the application side. That's how you handle them. And you have to learn to handle them because you don't want to show your users all those stack traces and everything. Right? We'll take a break here and then we'll come back and I'll show a few more things in this. Okay? We'll come back and do this. I've left my water bottle somewhere.
They pay him time and a half for his travel.
You would never really know.
He's like, he's got people that.
Where it's from is so called the dealer object. Okay. Handling everything. That's correct.
Yeah.
And then the user actually wants to gain a pass. I don't know why. Not access to the dealer. It's a package.
So.
Trying to.
Okay, let me come around. So I can this is still
Sorry.
No, you have to look. You have to.
I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that.
No, neither am I.
Food is too. So, your main belief playing, do you want to play here? We see if the user wants to play or not. If they don't, if they don't, then I just exit out of the system.
Sure.
And then if they do, then I go back to play a game. Here, which sends it into the dealer.
Okay, and so
Passes the responsibility to the dealer, which the dealer will eventually just shoot out J option pay, saying, this is your hand. So you deal with it. His is the most. Oh, wait, which I did.
oh, okay. How you doing?
I'm bad.
They're really good, actually.
How's it going? So, I guess you're sticking around.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna get some shit done, right?
Yeah.
I've got nowhere to live, so whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
No problem. Okay. Yeah, we'll finish it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll meet. I don't know if they have I think they have a class here after.
Do they?
Yeah. They do. Right?
Is anybody in the next one
You
over?
can go to the Maker's Lab.
It's always open.
It's always open. And no one's ever going to bother anything.
It's just a weird conversation.
No.
Just kind of.
Oh, you can do that or the library. Okay. I
Library.
don't give a shit. Or wherever.
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care either way.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's go.
We want to pass it to him so that Zach, so he shuffles the deck. And then this is supposed to be the first two cards that the player gets. And what the dealer has.
So this.
Not even like.
You need to delete the other ones so it doesn't get confused. Wait, it's looking in. Let's try this off this first.
So for sure, we have all the details. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Okay.
I don't know. There's one mentioned on the website here.
Add source file.
But see, like essentially written 90 pages.
This isn't. I think that more.
Three more classes. What if you do like an include or import statement for the actual dealer data file? Just like manually pull it.
Just import the file?
Yeah, I'm just curious if like the package is picking it up or not.
Yeah, it's hard to be hard. There's a Java doc.
Can't remember the syntax.
Could change the variable.
I'll go like the dealer dot Java.
I knew it. That's the thing.
Exact same.
I think there's an error in my code.
Okay. I hope I can't remember, but is it up? Is everybody back? I see a couple. I can't remember when we went on break. I think it's 20 minutes, isn't it? Oosh, okay, so let's go back now. Let's talk about this equals method that we haven't done yet, and I want to tell its importance to you and why am I doing it, and then I'll kind of add it, okay? Let me first kind of introduce you to something you may have already seen. You know how to work with strings, right? Strings are special objects made of text. So I'll just take an example, though. I mean, there's no other place I can do it here. So is this clear? Sorry, is this try catches everything clear? Oh, I said I would come back and show you something. Sorry about that. I better show it to you. Here, notice in this, both my quantities and my price are incorrect. The quantity cannot be less than 0. The price cannot be less than 0. But when I run it, I only see one error. I don't see the price error at all. But you have to keep this in mind. As soon as an exception is thrown, the program stops, right? So the exception was thrown how? The constructor was called, constructor called set ID, constructor called set name, the constructor called set quantity, and the set quantity threw an exception back to the constructor. The constructor threw the exception back to main. The main said, oops, I've got it, and it gave you the message. So you can't catch all the exceptions together. You can't do it together, but that doesn't make sense, right? One method will do a job and it will throw a exception, okay? So it won't come up. It won't. Keep that in mind. You'll say, why am I not seeing it? Because logically, if you think of it, it stopped right here. So if you take care of this one now you know, oh, that's my problem. Then it will tell you, oh, you have another problem. You'll say, why didn't it tell me about the problem before? Because logically it cannot. It's how the sequence is going on. Keep that in mind. And you'll say, okay, now once this is done, if everything gets done, what do I do now if I want to work with this project? Nothing. Now you kind of go ahead and in the try block, write whatever you want to do. Don't go out and say, okay, everything is okay. Now let me write my code after the finally. You don't write after the finally. You write it in try. Because you've said, I try to do this. Everything goes well. So now let me do the rest. Okay, so suppose for P1, I wanted to add something to the stock. So what would I say? I would say P1, add. And it says it needs an integer. And again, anytime you make a mistake, it will, remember units sold, units of added couldn't be negative. You can try it and it will work. So if I say add 0 or add -1, it will again throw an exception. And this time the message will be, do you remember the message? Of course you don't, but the message will be something that you don't have to remember. Units to be added to product must be greater than or equal to 0. So do all your everything, all computations come in the try now. Keep that in mind. All computations come in try. So after things are done, if you think it is okay, you just keep adding. So if I want to add 10 to the stock, and now how to see if things are working? Remember, we have a nice method. Makes our life so easy. I mean, at least for testing. I'll just say P1. So every time it will show me this product is in this quantity. So that way I can kind of work with it. What is it? It's bugging me in the edit. What's the short form of formatting your output? Oh, Alt-Shift-F. That's what I did. Alt-Shift-F. I don't know. Must have done something else. No magic here. Okay, so what will happen? So let's take that system again. So it will work now. Test that your product is working. Here, let's try it now. So before it should say 1 mouse 1 and 10.50. And notice if I don't give an F here, this is what I want to bring to your notice. I'll get an error here. I cannot pass 10.50 as a double. It's a double value. When you write it in literal, this is a literal constant. 10.50 does not represent a float. It represents a double. So to change it into a float, you either use the cast function or the easy way is you put F with it. Since you have only worked with double in the salary, I thought maybe you don't realize it, that there is a difference between how you pass values to a double variable and to a float variable. Okay, now let's run it, see what happens. So hoping everything will go away. Notice this is coming from your first two string. And how neat is it? It says there is one of mouse in stock priced at $10. Everything is neat and clean. The $sign is there, 2 places after decimal. The name of the product is there. The ID is right there in the front and so on. Then I added how much to the stock? I forget now. I added 10. So now it should become, oh, there was 1 and I've added 10. Now it becomes 11. So it is working. It works, right? Your add stock is working. So your next job is now to sell something. So keep in mind, I'm thinking if I give you a practical question in the exam, I'll give you a ready-made tester with it. So that when you write your code, you can test it and say, oh, yes, it works. That will give you, then I won't be asking of you, I can give it to you. And you can be satisfied, oh, my thing works, I don't have to worry. You can kind of guess how well you've done. So I'm still thinking with all this going on anyway, I don't have much time to think. Should think by tomorrow. Okay, let's sell something. P1, sell one product. This is the one. You could use the other overloaded method and put 1 here. There's nothing wrong in it. You can use either of the methods. The second method will also work. You can pass 1 as a parameter and it will work. But without 1 will also work. Why? Because remember, I have a sell product method. How much does it sell? 1 of the product. Can I sell 13 of the product? I only have 11 in stock. I can't. So that's what we do. We try everything. We try values that are correct, values that are incorrect, something that will throw an exception, something that will work. Everything needs to be checked in a tester. Right? I'm just overwriting it, but I should get an error here. It should say you can't sell 13 of the item. Product not in stock in the required spelling is wrong. Quantity. Required spelling is wrong. But there it is. Where is it coming from? The sell product method. So that's your job. That's the job of a tester. The tester guy or the person has to test all your methods in all possible conditions. 0, less than 0, greater than 0, out of stock, in stock, and everything needs to be checked. And that's what then the product comes out in the market. Not this product, I mean your application comes out in the market. So I can't sell 13. I can't. But can I sell one? Yes, I should be able to sell one. And how will I know one was sold? I'll again do a printout, a system print, right? And so it went from 1 to 11 and back to 10. There it is. Product has been sold. Can you sell negative number of products? Of course not. We've already, I mean, we haven't checked it, but you can do this too. It should come up with something like units to be sold must be greater than or equal to 0. See, all exceptions are working. And you have to test all of them is the biggest question. Nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes when we program. Programs are not built in a day. They take time and effort. And you have to polish them, right? 0 was also not allowed, I think. So keep testing. Yep, it cannot be. So I couldn't sell 0. I couldn't sell -3. I couldn't sell 13 because I've taken care. Now I can sell 1. I did. Now after this, can I again sell? So this is one method checked. Now let's see if I can sell 5 of the product. We've checked the negative things. We've checked 0, we've checked negative, we've checked 13. I'm left with 10, I think, after I sell a product. So I should be able to sell 5 and I should be left with 5. There it is. 5 are left. So all methods are working properly. Right now you try to add to your stock. We've already done it. Again, check zeros and negative values and so on. So the program is working. So my code is correct. Right, so I'm hoping and thinking that I can kind of do something like this for you and to make your work easy. I'm just time bound, nothing else. I should keep my worries to myself. You have enough of your own. Okay. Okay, so now let's do the equals method that I was talking about. I left out a method in the product class and I said I'll talk about it and then come back to it. Because you may not see its use apparently right now because the use will come when we build an inventory system. Now, you've worked with strings. I know you have worked with strings. I'm going to take 2 strings here. I'll just call it name1 or S1, S2. I'm really doing poor on my names today, but that's okay. Right? I'll take 2 strings and you can initialize them right here if you want. I mean, nothing stops you. William. I can see him right here. There. Right? So you can initialize 2 names. And if I want you to compare the contents of 2 strings, what method is available? What method is available? I heard something.
Compare.
There is one compare, yeah. Compare either returns a -1, 1 or a 0. Are there any other methods in the string class that allow you to compare the contents of 2 strings? Equals, ignore case, right? There are. So now let me show you something. So I'm going to kind of, because this is the easiest way of doing it. I'm going to compare my S1 and I'm going to use an equals method. Notice something in the equals method when it comes up. NetBeans is bringing it up. It is saying equals requires an object from you of type object. That's what it is saying, right? But then any object will do. Doesn't matter whether it is a predefined object like string or whether it is an object of type product that I create. But the important part is that this equals method is coming from the object class. The string class has overridden it. The string class has overridden it. Now, what has it done when it overrode it? It is an overridden method. You can see it's not a big deal at all. If you open up your string class, the only thing you have to do is look, kind of get information. Oh, there it is. So there is a compare, as William came up. Yes, there is, except that compare gives a -1, 1 and 0, which is kind of difficult to understand. Equals gives a true, false. That's the difference. So there is a compare. There it is, compare to. It compares 2 strings and it says, I think it returns a 1, -1 and 0. What does it return? An int, right? It returns 1 if it is 1 is less, -1 and 0. But on the other hand, the equals method returns a true or false, which is easier to understand, but it is available. But what I want to show you is the equals method. Look at the signatures. It says any object can come in. And here it will say, it overrides the equals in the class object. Like almost every class has overridden the toString method of the object class. Any class that requires to compare 2 objects in their contents has overridden the equals method. And string is a classic example. If you want to compare that two strings are equal, I'm not talking about the addresses where they sit, I'm talking about the contents. It has overridden the equals method. And how did it override it? Somebody has written that code. They start from the beginning of the string, they compare the two characters, equal, go to the next, equal, go to the next. Oops, not equal, return false. And it is case sensitive. This equals is case sensitive. So another method, case insensitive, was added, which was called equals ignore case, which is not an overridden method, right? So somebody wrote it for you, and you see you use it so easily. You say compare my string S1 to S2, so I'm expecting a false here. There it is, right? It's a Boolean value that comes back. Now, I said that every product has an unique identifying number, like a primary key of your tables. Why is it unique? Because products have to be recognized some way, and maybe their names are same, but their IDs can never be same. So when you stop, though again, even if it is a laptop, the name will not be laptop, it will be something like Lenovo, something, there will be some difference. But I'm saying even if names are same, I don't care, I'll put an ID. And I said this ID has to be unique, which means that when you are adding a new product to your inventory, an ID by that value should not already exist in the inventory, right? How will I check it? I'll say, oh, this product does, how will I tell the user, whoever is maintaining the inventory, that this is already, this product ID has been used. You can't use this product ID. For that, I will need a method that will compare the ID of existing products to the ID of the product that is coming in. And it will compare the IDs. And if the IDs are equal, it will return a value of false, or it will return a value of true. Now, since such a method is available in the object class, which is called equals, instead of writing a new method by the name is equal or whatever, I just will override the equals method. And what will my equals method do? It will compare the IDs of two products and will return a true if they are equal, and it will return a false if they are unequal. So string does it. String already has an equals, and it does the same job. It compares the contents of two strings and returns true if they are equal, and returns a false if they are not equal. Now my aim is, since I will need this added functionality in my products, that when I add, I'm going to write this equals method. It is an overridden method, and nobody stops you. You may not call it equals. You may call it whatever you like. You may not override. But if you have to think the right way, like a Java programmer, and not reinvent the wheel every time and give it a name which makes more sense, object said every class can have an equals method. And what will that equals do? It will compare the contents of that objects. For me, comparing two products means comparing their IDs. Right? So how will I do it? Now let's think of it. So notice the incoming object is of type object. My first job will be whatever is coming in, convert it into a product. How do you do that? By the casting. Keep in mind, a product is an object. This is the is a relationship, right? There you had said deck of cards has a card. That was a has a relationship. Deck of cards has cards. That is has. This is a, so I can pass a product object into it, because object is the father of all the classes, and it says every object, what its type, whether it is a string, whether it is P, whether it is employee, whether it is product, whether it's deck of cards, any object can come in as a parameter. So because I know I'm writing a method for my product class, I took this object and I converted it into a product, and I kept it in a local variable. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know the ternary operator in Java, but let's write it simply. Heard of ternary operator in Java? No. Okay, no big deal. Let's write it as if you were doing it. How do I compare two products? I want to compare their IDs. How is the equals method called? How do you call the equals method of the string class? I just wrote it. Name of the first string dot equals, and pass the parameter that you want to compare it with, the string you want to compare it with as this part. Products will also be compared this way. I will call it with the product, right? I will call the equals method with the product, and I'll pass it another P2 to it. And I want to see is P1 equal to P2. Kind of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if, so instead, so I'm saying the product that you're comparing, this current object's ID, if it is, it's an ID is a, what was an ID, string or integer? It is a string. Oops. Okay. I was going equal to in a minute. Okay. So this is the ID. And then we will have to use the, oops, the equals ignore case because it's a string. I'm going to use the equals ignore case and I'm going to compare it with the object that is coming in p dot get ID. This is a little tricky, but it's not as if you can't understand it. We'll do it one by one. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to compare with whatever object you call it. So if you call it with p1 dot, you're trying to compare p1's ID. So this says, if you call this method with p1 dot, this automatically replaces p1. That's what it does in strings also. When you go s1 dot something, you're comparing the this is s1. So you're saying if the ID of the current object, whoever you called it with, equals ignore case, the ID of the object that you gave me, S2, the P2, right? If you gave me, if they are equal, okay, what am I missing? Am I missing brackets? And do I have an extra one? No, I have a one less. Equals ignore case requires a bracket. So there is the beginning of ignore case, there is the end of ignore case. There it is. It's kind of a little tricky, but see, this dot get ID is being compared with whatever object you are passing in. I convert it into a product first, his or its ID, not his or her. If that's the case and they are equal, what must I return? True. If the IDs are same, I'm saying the products are equal. For me, that's the definition of equality of my products, right? Else, what do I return? False. That's how my equals will work. How does the string equals work? It compares the contents. When are my two products equal? When their IDs are the same, they're equal. Makes sense? So all I've done is compare the ID of the current object, which is this. This stands for the current object with the ID of the object that you pass as a parameter. I'll show you how to use this method in a minute in the tester. If they are equal, and I've used equals ignore case because they were strings. So I'm saying doesn't matter whether they're called Anju and Cap or whatever. Whatever is the ID, some ID, P1 computer, P1 laptop, whatever. So I use the equals ignore case because I don't want case sensitivity in string comparison. And if I say if that's the case, return true or a false. Now, the ternary operator in Java. You're aware of the if-else statement, right? That's the if-else statement. An if-else statement in Java can be replaced by a ternary operator. It's called ternary for three. It has three parts to it. Like for has three arguments. The ternary binary operators take two operands, A plus B, right? They take two operands. They're called binary operators. A ternary operator takes three operands. And the three operands are a condition to be checked. What do I need to do when the condition is true? What do I need to do when the condition is false? So see how I'll write this same logic that I've written in 5 lines, how I'll write it kind of together. And if it makes sense, good. If it doesn't, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm going to return something. What am I going to return? I'm going to check this condition. We just wrote it. So I'm going to remove it without the brackets, right? So the outer one, I'm leaving the outer one. I'm copying that condition here. This is the condition I want to check. If this condition is true, look at the question mark. Ternary operator has 3 parts to it. And these are how the 3 parts are separated. The condition comes in the first part. In the second part, what do you want to do if the condition is true? What do you want to do? So suppose I was assigning this to a variable of type in Boolean, right? Because it will return a true or a false. So if I'm saying if the condition is true, flag, sorry. Oh my God, Boolean flag. So I'm putting this value in a Boolean variable. If the condition is true, I want to put in the flag yes. Right? Oh, sorry. No, Boolean variable. Oh my God. And if it is false, I want to keep false in it. This is one way of doing it. If you take a string variable and I say answer, and I do the same thing. I put the condition. And if the condition is true, what do you want to save in this answer? Yes. Otherwise, what do you want to save in the answer? No. This is the ternary operator. It's written in 1 line. All it does, it checks the condition, and it does this if the condition is true. And it does this if the condition is false. Right? Now, what is doing this? I took it and string object. So it will save yes in this. If the condition is false, it will save no in my answer. So what am I doing here? I'm saying return. If this condition is true, return true. And if the condition is false, return false. There. So you can write if else, you can replace a normal if else, only one if else, not nested or whatever. You can return, you can use a ternary operator instead of an if else statement in Java. This is the ternary operator. So now, of course, you can't have two return statements is what it will be saying, unreachable statement, but you can replace this if else by a single return statement. I'll show a ternary operator to you maybe in the tester so that it makes more sense. So what am I saying? I am saying if this condition is true, return true. If the condition is false, return false. So automatically a true is returned if the condition is true and a false is returned if the condition is false. So ternary operator because it has three operands, right? Ternary operator because it has three operands. And you can do whatever you like with it. I'm returning the value. You could be adding or subtracting. And I'll show you something in main. If you don't understand this right now, don't worry about it. But I hope you understand this. All I'm doing is I'm comparing the IDs of the two products. And if their IDs are same, I return a true. If the IDs are not the same, I return a false. That's what I do. I'm going to test the equals method. Why do I need this method? Because in future, because I will be doing it, not today, I think, because it won't be possible. I haven't done it with the other section. In future, when I put products in my inventory, I don't want duplicate product ID to be used. That's where it will help me. So when I add it to my array list of products, I'll check their IDs and then only add it. I'll say if the products are not same, IDs are not same, added. So for now, if you don't understand it, let me show it to you in run because it always makes more sense when I show you. Here, let's take the ternary operator. Let's take an integer variable I, just a local variable. I'm going to check a condition. Is 2 greater than 5? Is 2 greater than 5? No. Here is your first and here is your second. This is an assignment. If 2 is greater than 5, assign, it's an int variable, assign 1 to the integer I, else assign 0 to the integer I. This is a ternary operator. Condition is checked. If the condition to I, if the condition is false, 0 is assigned to I. I've used an int variable here. You could be using anything. Print it out and see what is the value of I. I'll just kind of give a message because then we know we are talking about I. It can be anything. You can take a string. Here, take a string object. Let's call it J. How bad names am I using? Okay, let's compare the same condition. 2 is greater than 5. Yes. If it is greater than 5, what do you want to do? I want to assign yes to my string variable, else I want to assign no to my string variable. That's another ternary operator. I mean, another use. And again, we'll print out, oops, copy and paste, spelling is wrong. And we'll print out the value of J. That's the ternary operator. That's all it is. So it's a short form of an if then else. So I'm saying if 2 is greater than 5, assign 1 to I, else assign 0 to I. I don't even have to assign it. I could have done this. I could have picked up this expression, this ternary expression, and put it right here in my system out printer. And it is returning a value. I can print it straight away. This was just to maybe make it a little more clear. And then I'm saying the same thing here. If 2 is greater than 5, assign yes to J, else assign no to J. So a ternary operator will always return a value because it's checking something. So it has a true thing. What do you want to do? It has a false thing. What do you want to do? You could even do this, though you won't, but you could do this right away. You could say, just like a condition, I'm not, I think it should work. It's not as if it's just a ternary operator. If 2 is greater than 5, I'm almost positive, but I don't know. Sometimes you just have to check. It looks logical, but it is not. I can do a println right here of yes. And the only thing is standing alone. Can I use it alone is the kind of, looks very odd, so don't know. I never thought of it. If we have no syntax errors, then logically it will run too. Yeah, it can be. No, it doesn't like it. What does it say? Not a statement. Yeah. This looks odd. So it's usually either in assignment or in some printing. My mistake. Nothing wrong in trying, right? Okay, now see, this will show you how ternary operator works, and then we will use that equals method. Okay, so let's run this. So what are you expecting? Is 2 greater than 5? No. So I should get a 0. 2 greater than 5? No. So I should get a no. Here are my answers, 0 and no. And where is this false coming from? Oh, from the println of S1 equals S2. That's how ternary operator works. Okay, now what have I done? Now what have I done is in my product class, instead of printing it out or doing whatever, I have taken the condition, is the ID of the current object equal to the ID of the object that is being passed as a parameter? If yes, return true, else return false. So what you've written here, I've converted into a one single return statement using the ternary operator. Now, how will we use it? How will we test that it works? Create another project. You have one product, create another product. Let's create P2, right? I'll go everything right because I don't want to now create exceptions. We've already checked that, yes, they're created. Now, if I give this product the same ID and the rest really doesn't matter. I mean, the quality is on this. How many of quantity? 5. I don't know how many keyboards. $50. If you give an integer, then you don't need an F because it's an integer, and integers can go into float boxes. It's when you try to put a double in a float, because double is bigger and float is smaller. Smaller things can always go in bigger boxes. Integer is small, can go in a float box, but a double cannot go into a float box. Therefore, you can't do it without it. Okay, so I have another product P2. How will you check if P1 is, and what are you expecting? Is P1 equal to P2? Remember to put it in try. Everything goes in try now because you checked that everything was okay, and then you do the rest. Okay, so never outside catch or whatever. So what are you expecting it to be printed out when I call that method? Am I saying P1, are you equal to P2? This is how you will call the equals method for a product. Exactly like you call it for a string. Exactly the same way, because the signatures are the same, because it's an overridden method of the object class. So what am I saying? So what will happen to the this? When you call it with P1 dot, what does this become? P1. Is the ID of P1 equal to the ID of P2? Bring that signatures here. Let me bring those signatures here for you to see. It's important that you understand this method because this will tell you what's happening. I'll bring the first 2 lines so that you can see what is happening what is actually happening. I'll just put them here, okay? Okay, so see, this method is called, the equals method is called. Equals method is being sent an object. What is that object here? P2, right? That's what is being sent. This P2 is converted into a product object. You'll say, oh, but it is already a product. But remember, the method is expecting an object. It assumes it is an object, any object. So it has to be casted. And after it has to be casted, what was in your if? So I'll just copy the condition.
Instead of casting it, could we override the method just to take in the right type?
No, because the overridden method has a signature in which the parameter has to be of type object, right? So if I try to do that, with what I've written here, that it is an overridden method. What was it called? Product or anything else. See, it will give you a problem. It says method does not override or implement a method from a super type. So if you don't want to do this, then you will not call it equals, you will call it something else. That's the other way of doing it. But my aim is to try to teach you to override it, right? Not that it is necessary, but something different, something that you can put 2 and 2 together with the equals of string. Yeah, but if you don't want to use this overridden method, then you will pass it a product object and compare them, right? Okay, so now what are you doing? So see what is happening. In a sense, see, when you call it with P1 dot, who is this? P1. P1, get your ID, which is 1 for your information. Are you equal to Who is this P2? Who is this P2? P2 goes here and it is changed into this P here. Compare it with the ID of P2. Are they equal? Yes. Print out a true or a false. Remember, it is returning a true or a false. That's what is happening with the equals method. This P1 replaces this because you're calling it with P1. P1 dot, you're calling it with P1. P1 is the current object. And P gets replaced with this P2. This P2 goes here. It is casted into a product and it's called P in this method, and it is comparing P2. So are you expecting a true or a false? Both my P1 and P2 have the same ID, 1 and 1. Doesn't matter, they are strings, even though it is a number. I'm expecting a true. So let's run it. Can't be that fast. There it is. There is the answer, true. Now change it. Your P1 is 1. Let's make P2 as 2. And then run it again. Now your answer is false. So this equals method will help me to ensure that when I add my products to my inventory, I don't add a new product with the same ID of an existing product. So whenever I say add, I will kind of course, I'll say add P2, for example, a product called P2. And in there, in my add method, I'll kind of manipulate, I'll check, are they equal? You can do it, kind of stuff. So it will come handy, but this is something new. Maybe you haven't even heard of it. That's perfectly fine. Now you know it. Right? Okay, so that takes care of all the methods in the product class. Now, since we have time, but I can't give you an assignment because I couldn't do the other one and half hour is not enough. Now we will complete the product class in the sense. Let's come back. Let's tease your brains a little. Add these two instance variables that will make sense in a product, the reorder level and the maximum quantity level. Right? Now, what is this maximum quantity? You can't stop beyond this. You can only stop till this. And what is your reorder level? The reorder level is that level, that quantity at which automatically you should be telling the user to stop it. You should be kind of giving an exception or something to the user, a message to the user saying, oops, you need to reorder, so that the user knows. Otherwise, nobody is going to go and check every day for how much in how much you know. The user must get a message. As soon as products are sold in the database, the products get updated, the quantity get updated. And messages are thrown out to the user, to the manager, whoever, saying, this needs reorder today, this needs reorder today. That's how things are reordered. Nobody goes and counts every day, right? So as soon as you add two new, so do you see the use of these two variables with the inventory? One says, when does a particular product need to reorder? And the other one says, I can't order beyond this. I mean, that's my stock. I can't go beyond this. That's my physical space. So to be quick, we'll go and do the setters and getters quickly. So where is your setters? It was in refactor, encapsulate fields. Okay, so pick up the two fields for which I haven't written them. I have not done them for and get and set and set. So these two, the two getters and the two setters. So under refactor, go to encapsulate fields and choose this. The rest have already been written. So therefore they are grayed out. They're already written. And is there anything use accessor written? Okay. And say select all, not select all, sorry. Select, where is it? Refactor. So what happens? Somewhere here at the end. That's okay. Don't worry about it for now. The get reorder level will return the reorder level. The set reorder level checking. Can you, when you create a product, when you create a new product, can you give a negative value for setting the reorder level? No, it's a quantity. It's just a quantity. So we'll add a condition here. What is your condition? If the value that you give it. So these are the easy ones. If the value that you give it is less than or equal, at 0 also, 0 is okay, is less than 0. Oops. Then you will throw an exception. And we'll do the normal. We will throw a new my exception and give something like something we've done before. Reorder level must be greater than 0. Oops. As soon as you say throw here, remember to add throws here. There's not much in exception handling. Throw, throws, two verbs, right? And then handling in try catch. And it throws a my exception. What doesn't it like? Oh, doesn't like this. And what doesn't it like? Semicolon. There. I've changed my set reorder level. I changed the comments afterwards. Right now, I'm more concentrating on the methods because of time limit, right? So that's my set reorder level. What about maximum quantity? Same concept. You can't set the maximum quantity of a product to be negative. Is there something else that you must consider about these two new variables you are adding? Can the maximum quantity be less than quantity when you stock it for the first time? Think about it. Here is the kind of the relationship. So it looks easy, but here is the relationship. The quantity is kind of sitting in between. The maximum quantity should be either equal to or greater than the quantity. It can never be less, because you're saying this is the maximum I can stock, and you're setting the and in the constructor, I'm thinking of the first time, right? Of course, things you have to take care of everything, but nowhere the value of maximum quantity can be less than quantity whenever you set. What about the other hand side? The reorder level should be less than or equal to quantity. Now the equality is not too good. Reordering is always done, but it can never be more. You see what I'm trying to say? How much can you stock at the maximum level? So if I say, okay, I have a new product, I want to put it in my stock. I say right now its quantity is 5. How can I say its maximum quantity is 4? Because it can't happen. I can only stock 4, and I'm saying please stock 5. So this has to be done. Can I say that the reorder level is 10? So at the beginning itself, the reorder is incorrect. How can you stock 5 when the reorder level is 10? It's saying when it reaches 10, stock it again. And I'm saying, oh, I'm only putting it 5 in stock. So now all these 3 variables are related, and that is what will make this complex. They're all related now. Why? Because whenever you set the maximum quantity, its value must always be greater than the quantity value. Whenever you set the reorder level, it cannot be a value that is more than the quantity. Or the other option, easy option, is make them as private methods, right? Make them private. Nobody can change the maximum quantity and the reorder from outside. Only the constructor can do it for the first time, and then we will check these conditions. But then the situation is, what if I rent another place and I have more place to stock now? My maximum quantity can go up. Right? So things like every application will have so many boundaries and conditions set with it. But my aim of showing you this is completely this. If the reorder level is less than 0, you throw an exception. In what other case should you throw an exception? There is another condition. If your reorder level, okay. So if your reorder level that you're trying to set is greater than, well, we'll have to think for a minute. Inventory equal. Can it be equal to quantity? Yeah, it could be. And get the quantity of the system. Then again, you throw an exception. This condition is being violated. So the more instance variables you put, the more there are more checkings to be done. What have I done? I have 1. It can be less than 0. That makes sense to everybody, right? You can't set a negative value for a reorder level. How can you say reorder this product when they become -5? Doesn't make sense. So it has to be greater than 0. So that's not a tough one to understand. This one is a little more, you need a little more knowledge of the inventory, because what I'm saying is, how is the level at which you reorder something be more than what is the quantity in stock already? You know what I mean? I'm trying to say you only reorder when you go beyond less than a particular limit. And that less than a particular limit, if you're trying to set it a value, the stock is already there. You already have some product in stock. How can you set this value being more than this value? Because it already needs reordering. You're doing something that is wrong. So I'm saying if this value is more, maybe it won't be as clear, but maybe let's see if I can try my best. This is more becoming a little more, you need the knowledge. Oops. Must be less than quantity in stock. In both cases, if you try to do anything, it will kind of give you an error. We had a spelling mistake somewhere. I forget now where. In your toString, Remember when I showed it, I said I made a mistake. I won't know now, I forget now. Oh well, there was a spelling mistake. So that's the set reorder. So the say our method can have more than one throws clause. I'm checking more than one conditions. Right? And that's how it will be. Like you put all the conditions that are validating your input, you're validating your input. You're saying my value should be greater than 0, less than 100, compare it with another variable, should be more than that, should be less than that. All you need is put it in ifs and throw exceptions when that is not valid. Right? So suppose there are, let me kind of think of, let me give you maybe a silly example. Suppose only 50 chairs can come in this room. That's its maximum, right? Now there is something that we need and we take out some chairs from here, right? So I'm only left with 30. And as soon as it goes to 30, I need to kind of tell the management the number of chairs in this room is less because I have a class of 50 students here. That's the reorder level. The 30 is the reorder level. So I started with 50. People started taking chairs from wherever they wanted. They took it out of this room. It has reached 30 now. I can't take a class because I have 50 students. So the reorder level says, please order more chairs for this group. Right? Okay, that makes sense. That is reorder level. Now think of the second condition that I've done. The second condition says there are 30 chairs in this room to begin with, and somewhere from outside, like nobody knows. So set methods can be called from outside. If it is automatic, I would know I need more chairs. But somebody comes from outside. There are already 30 chairs in here, and the reorder level is 30. I know it is 30, and therefore I've told the management I need more classes. But somebody comes from outside and changes the reorder level to 40. Now, how can the person or the outside factor change it to 40 when I don't even have that much in my class? I only have 30 chairs in my class. And that's exactly the relationship between what is in stock and you're trying to change it to a value that doesn't make sense because you're already less than that. So that's the second condition, which says the reorder level must be a value of what is already in stock. You can't make it more. It has to be less than that if you are changing it. If you make this method as private, you don't make it as public, then only the constructor has the right to do it. And nobody can do it from outside. Then you needn't even bother about this from the outside world, but the constructor will still say, I'm trying to put 20 in stock and my reorder level is 30. I'm not even putting the right one in stock. I can't put 20 in stock because I say the reorder level is 30. I have to reorder before I even do anything else. That's that condition. It may not make a lot of sense, but that's the best I can do of trying to tell you how it works. So this cannot be more than quantity. If it is more than quantity, so it cannot be more, then it should be, I should tell the user it has to be less than quantity. Else I just set it like anything else setting. So your setters will do all validation now. All validation. What about maximum quantity? Return is okay. What about here? Can your maximum quantity be less than 0? Nope. So we'll take this one. That's an easy one. We all know maximum quantity cannot be 0. It's the second one that is a little more tough. So can your quantity, maximum quantity, be less than 0? No. So we'll do that. And what is the second condition? How can you say the maximum quantity is more than quantity? So this, and your second condition is, because you haven't said throws. And your second condition is that relationship, this relationship. And what is the relationship? And you know what? I may still be wrong. I may have another relationship that I want to compare, but step by step. So if your reorder level is less than, so what is that called? Maximum quantity. So you're trying to set a value which is less than the quantity. How can you do that? How can you say, oh, the maximum you can store in this room are 50, whereas I already have 60 chairs? How can that happen? So you're violating a rule yourself. So setting is again taken care of. So we'll say maximum quantity. I know it's a little kind of confusing, but maybe in the long run you will understand it. When in the long run means when we use it. Must be less than quantity in stock. Oh, must be greater than. This is greater. Maximum is always greater than. Or you can say in stock. And if there is anything else, there is a third relationship also. If you like, you can create as many as you like, as long as they are logical. The relationship is, you'll say, oh, what about reorder and maximum quantity? The reorder has always to be less than the maximum quantity. How can you say reorder level is 10 and the maximum that you can store is only 5? Like silly things, right? So all conditions need to be added everywhere. So the other one is reorder level has to be less than maximum quantity by that relationship. Again, what will you do? Nothing much. You just keep adding it in your ifs. That's all exception handling. See, it's easier for the class. Class says this doesn't work, I won't do it. This doesn't work, I won't do it. So I'm adding now another one from that condition. I've only written this on the board and I'm just copying them in ifs. That's all I'm doing. Reorder should be less than quantity. Reorder should be less than maximum quantity. And if you don't understand it, I won't go into details. I won't do the complex part because the aim is not to confuse you. The aim is to make you understand. So what is my third condition that I'll check? Get the maximum quantity and compare it with it. And if that's the case, again, throw an exception. The gist of this is that you should be checking all conditions before you set the value. That's the gist of throwing your exceptions. And you'll say, who will tell me these conditions? Either your client will tell you these conditions if you were in a real-time environment, or your teacher tells you these conditions, because you have to know what I want you to check, right? And this is all coming from just what I have of inventory, the knowledge I have of inventory. And I did make a mistake today. I never thought of negative parts when I was restocking because I was thinking of a different method altogether. There. So you just keep adding. Whenever you have a problem, throw an exception. Whenever you have a problem, throw an exception. And notice I'm getting the quantity by using get quantity. I'm getting the maximum quantity by using what. And this is what you're trying to set. So how can you set a value for this variable that is more than the quantity? You can't do it. You're violating a rule. I only have 10 and you're saying set the reorder level to 15. That means you should have already reordered it. You're already below it. You should have reordered it. So these conditions will not come out of the blue. You may not even think of them. But if you know the conditions, if I give you the conditions, all you have to do is you just have to add them to your set state, to your sets. So what is the now? What was the set maximum? Add this here also. Okay, so what we just have to convert it. So if the maximum quantity should be greater, so if the maximum quantity is less than it, so we'll have to kind of do it another way so that it makes more sense to us. So if your maximum quantity, what you're passing me, is less than the reorder level, which it cannot be, at the reorder level. And then we'll say reorder maximum quantity must be more than. These are just error. These are just checks. And don't stress a lot about it if you don't understand it, but at least you understand this. I've given you the rule. All I'm doing is implementing it. That's all I'm doing. Right? So here the maximum quantity must be greater than reorder level. There. And all these conditions are coming from here. I'm only picking them from here. The quality I'm not paying much attention to right now because it needs a little bit of thinking, but all I'm doing is doing it from here. So maximum quantity should be greater than quantity, and the quantity should be greater than reorder level. Right? So that means quantity is also involved. So you will have to go back to your quantity set where you did your quantity set, and you will have to add these conditions there also. Where is your quantity set? There it is. So you had checked 2 conditions already. Add 2 more. Quantity should be greater than reorder. And quantity should be less than max. Just adding. I'm only adding conditions. I've already given you the conditions. So your second check is, and notice I don't have to, I just have to go to the set method because I did the job right the first time. This value should be less than the reorder level. If I get the reorder level, sorry, greater than. Yeah, if it is less, it throws an error. To an exception. And that's exactly what you do. You look at what we need to throw and just throw them. Just throw the exceptions. Okay, so let's throw this. Where is this coming from? Quantity must be greater than reorder. I've just written it in English. That's all I've done. If quantity is less, then it is a problem. So what should we say? Must be greater than or equal to reorder level. Of course, when you make an application, you will be much more educated about it than just thinking about it. And the third condition, what do you see as the third condition? The quantity must be less than maximum quantity. So you get it if it is more than your maximum quantity. I'll put this on Blackboard. For now, you just understand it. Then you will say quantity in stock must be less than or equal to whatever. It will depend. I mean, I'm not paying so much attention to the equality right now just because I want to just get the idea across that anytime you have to check validation, it has to be done completely in the sets. Every set must do it. So see, quantity is now doing 3 checks. It should be greater than 0. If it is less than 0, throws an exception. If it is less than the reorder level, it throws an exception. If it is greater than the maximum quantity, it throws an exception. All 3 checks.